Almost 1,400 years ago, three empires stood at the edge of annihilation. Two of them, Rome and Persia, had been bleeding each other for centuries. The third, no one saw it coming. And what happened next didn't just change the Middle East. It erased the old world. But here's what they don't tell you, the empire that won. It had no professional army, no siege weapons, no navy. It was born in a desert most people couldn't cross without dying. And within 10 years, it conquered half the known world. How? That's not the question historians argue about anymore. The real question is this: why did two of history's greatest empires, both with millions of soldiers, centuries of experience, and vast treasures, collapse so fast against an enemy they had never even considered a threat? Because what you're about to hear isn't just a war story. It's the story of why empires fall, and it starts with a man no one believed could win. His name was Khalid ibn al-Waleed. And before we go any further, let me tell you what makes him different from every other general you've ever heard of. Alexander the Great, he inherited the best army in the world. Julius Caesar, he had Roman legions, trained, disciplined, unstoppable. Napoleon, genius tactician, sure, but he also had cannons, supply lines, and a nation behind him. Khalid had none of that. What he had was this: a group of men on horses and camels. Most of them had never fought in a real war. They carried swords and basic bows. Their armor was leather and cloth. And yet, in 2 years, Khalid fought over 100 battles. He never lost once. Not once. But here's where it gets stranger. While Khalid was preparing to invade one of the richest regions on earth, while Rome and Persia were still recovering from a war that nearly destroyed them both, the man who would give the order to conquer the world, he was dying. His name was Abu Bakr, the first caliph. And in the last months of his life, he made a decision that would change everything. He looked at the map. He saw two empires, wounded, exhausted, bleeding, and he asked a question: what if we don't wait for them to recover? That question, that one decision, is why you're watching this video right now. Because the world we live in today, the borders, the religions, the languages, the conflicts, all of it traces back to what happened next. But to understand how it happened, we need to go back, not to the beginning of Islam, further, to the war that broke the world. For over 600 years, Rome and Persia had been locked in a cycle of war. Not just battles, generational wars. Wars that lasted decades. Wars where entire armies were wiped out. Wars where cities were burned, populations enslaved, treasuries drained. The Romans called Persia their greatest enemy. The Persians called Rome their eternal rival. And for 6 centuries, they fought. Over trade routes, over religion, over pride. But then came the year 602 AD. The Roman emperor was murdered. A usurper took the throne. And the Persian king, Khosrow II, saw his chance. He declared war. Not a border skirmish. Not a raid. Total war. And for the next 26 years, Rome and Persia destroyed each other. The Persians conquered Jerusalem in 614. They took Egypt, the breadbasket of the Roman Empire, in 619. They reached the walls of Constantinople itself. Rome was collapsing. But then, against all odds, the Roman Emperor Heraclius rallied. He invaded Persia, burned their capital, forced them to surrender. By 628, the war was over. Rome had won. Barely. But here's what no one realized at the time: both empires were already dead. They had bled themselves dry. Rome had lost half its army. Persia was drowning in civil war. Entire provinces were abandoned. Cities were in ruins. Trade routes were destroyed. And into this power vacuum, into this moment of absolute chaos, came a new force. It didn't have the gold of Rome. It didn't have the armies of Persia. But it had something neither empire had anymore: unity, purpose, speed, and a man who understood something both Rome and Persia had forgotten. Wars aren't won by the strongest army. They're won by the army that knows how to move. That man was Khalid, and his first target, Iraq. Now here's where it gets interesting. When Khalid invaded Persian Iraq in 633, he had 18,000 men. The Persians, they sent 20,000 to stop him. Professional soldiers, armored, experienced. They outnumbered Khalid. They outweighed him. They had every advantage. So what did Khalid do? He didn't attack them head-on. He didn't siege their cities. He did something no one expected. He disappeared. The Persian general, Hormuzd, knew Khalid was coming. He positioned his army on the main road to protect the capital. He waited and waited, but Khalid never came. Days passed. Hormuzd got nervous. He sent scouts. Nothing. Then, a report came in. Khalid wasn't on the road. He had taken his entire army through the desert. The waterless, burning desert that no army was supposed to cross. And now, he was behind them. threatening a completely different city. Hormuzd panicked. He broke camp, marched his troops through the heat, and when he finally caught up to Khalid, his men were exhausted. They had been marching for days, no rest, no preparation, and that's exactly what Khalid wanted. The Battle of the Chains, April 633. The Persians formed up to the west of the city of Kazima. Khalid's army waited on the hills to the south. For hours, they just stood there. The Persians, in full armor, under the desert sun, waited and waited. The heat was unbearable. They were tired, thirsty, but Khalid, his men were rested, mounted, ready. Finally, Hormuzd couldn't take it anymore. He rode forward, called Khalid to single combat. Now here's where the story gets wild. Khalid accepted. Both generals dismounted, drew their swords. The two armies watched. They clashed, evenly matched. Then, a group of Persian warriors rushed forward to help their general. A violation of the duel. But one of Khalid's commanders, Qaqa, saw it. He charged in. Within minutes, Hormuzd was dead, and the Persian army, they broke. Without their general, they panicked. Khalid's cavalry swept around them. Half the Persian army was killed. The rest fled. Khalid lost maybe a few hundred men. But here's the part that no one talks about. This wasn't luck. This was psychological warfare. Khalid didn't just outfight the Persians. He outthought them. He understood something modern militaries teach to this day. Fatigue kills more soldiers than swords. By the time the battle started, the Persians had already lost. They just didn't know it yet. And Khalid, he was just getting started. News of the defeat reached the Persian capital, Ctesiphon. The young Shah, Yazdijerd III, was terrified. He sent another army, then another, and another. Over the next 3 months, Khalid fought 4 major battles. He won them all. But here's what's insane. He never had more than 20,000 troops. The Persians, they kept sending armies of 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. And Khalid kept winning. How? By doing something Rome and Persia had never dealt with before. He never stopped moving. Traditional armies in this era moved slow. Why? Because they were heavy. Roman infantry wore 50 pounds of armor. Persian cavalry had iron plate mail. They needed supply wagons. They needed rest. Khalid's army, light, fast, mounted. They could march 50 miles in a day. Roman and Persian armies, maybe 15. That meant Khalid could strike first before the enemy was ready. Choose the battlefield, always picking terrain that favored him. Retreat into the desert if things went wrong, where heavy armies couldn't follow. This wasn't just tactics. This was a new kind of warfare, and neither Rome nor Persia knew how to fight it. But the Persians were about to try something desperate. In May 633, the Persians sent their largest army yet, 30,000 troops, led by 3 generals. This time, they weren't going to let Khalid pick the fight. They positioned themselves at key crossings, fortified cities, blocked the roads. Khalid was surrounded, and for the first time, he was outnumbered 2 to 1. Every military historian will tell you the same thing. When you're outnumbered and surrounded, you retreat. You don't attack. So what did Khalid do? He split his army into 3 groups, and attacked all 3 Persian armies at once. At night, in the middle of a sandstorm. Let that sink in. The Persians thought they had him trapped. They thought their 3 armies would slowly close in and crush him. Instead, Khalid moved so fast that he attacked each Persian army before they even knew the others were under attack. In one night, Khalid's forces destroyed a 10,000-strong Persian army near Musi, routed a 15,000-strong force of Arab Christian allies, scattered the remnants before they could regroup. The Persian generals couldn't believe it. How did he coordinate 3 attacks simultaneously across miles of desert in the dark? Khalid never explained, but modern military analysts think they know. Pre-planned rally points, synchronized timing based on star positions, trust in his commanders to execute independently. This is what we now call combined arms warfare, and Khalid was doing it 1,400 years ago. But here's what you need to understand about Khalid. He wasn't a conqueror for glory. He wasn't doing this for loot. In fact, after every battle, Khalid would offer peace terms, allow non-Muslims to keep their religion, lower taxes compared to what the Persians had charged. Local populations welcomed him. Why? Because Rome and Persia had been bleeding these provinces for centuries. High taxes, religious persecution, corrupt governors. Khalid offered something different: stability, lower taxes, religious tolerance if you paid the jizya tax. For the first time in generations, the people of Iraq saw a government that didn't see them as cattle to be milked. And that's why, even after Khalid left, the conquests held. Now, just when you think Khalid has won, just when Persia is collapsing, morning, he gets a letter from Caliph Abu Bakr. And the letter says, "Stop, turn west, leave Iraq. We need you in Syria, now." Khalid reads it, and for the first time in his career, he has to abandon a victory. Because while Khalid was conquering Iraq, Rome was counterattacking in Syria, and the Muslim forces there, they were losing. So Khalid took 9,000 of his best troops, and did something that should have been impossible. To reach Syria from Iraq, there were two routes: the safe route, along the Fertile Crescent, through towns with water and supplies. Travel time, 3 to 4 weeks. The suicide route, straight through the waterless Syrian desert. Travel time, 5 days. Survival rate, unknown. Khalid chose the suicide route. But here's the insane part: there was no water for hundreds of miles. So Khalid came up with a plan that sounds like fiction. He forced 20 camels to drink massive amounts of water, more than they could naturally hold. Then, as his army marched through the desert, they would slaughter the camels one by one, and harvest the water stored in their stomachs. It worked. In 5 days, Khalid's army crossed a desert that was supposed to be uncrossable, and when they emerged on the other side, the Romans had no idea they were coming. Let's pause here for a second, because I want you to understand what just happened. Khalid marched 9,000 men, through 500 miles of desert, with no water, in 5 days. Modern military analysts have tried to replicate this march using historical records. They can't. Even with modern equipment, hydration systems, GPS, it's considered nearly impossible. So how did Khalid do it? We don't know for sure, but we do know this: when he arrived in Syria, the Romans were not ready. When Khalid reached Syria in July 634, the situation was desperate. The Muslim forces there had won some small battles, but they were divided, outnumbered, struggling. The Byzantine Emperor Heraclius, now based in Antioch, had sent a 25,000-strong army south to crush them, led by his brother Theodore and an Armenian general named Vahan. The Muslim commanders knew they couldn't win alone, so they sent for Khalid. And when Khalid arrived, he immediately took command. His first move: consolidate all Muslim forces into one army. Second move: pick the battlefield before the Romans could. The two armies met at Ajnadain, southeast of Jerusalem. The Muslims had about 15,000 troops. The Byzantines, at least 10,000, heavily armored, professional soldiers. The battle started with single combat, Byzantine and Muslim champions fighting one-on-one in front of both armies. Then, as tradition, the main forces engaged. For 2 full days, the armies clashed. Infantry grinding against infantry, cavalry charges, arrow volleys. Neither side could break through, until Khalid did what he always did: he waited. On the second day, Khalid held back a 4,000-strong cavalry reserve. The Byzantines didn't know it existed. When the Byzantine line was fully committed, when they had no reserves left, Khalid unleashed his cavalry. They drove deep wedges through the Byzantine center. The Roman line collapsed. Byzantine commander Vahan was killed. Theodore fled. The road to Damascus was open, and within weeks, Khalid was at the gates of one of the oldest cities in the world, Damascus. For centuries, it had been one of the jewels of the Roman Empire. Massive walls, strong garrison, endless supplies. When Khalid arrived in August 634, he had about 20,000 troops. Not enough to fully surround the city. So he did something clever. He blockaded the main gates, the ones leading to roads and trade routes. And then, he waited. For weeks, nothing happened. The Romans inside thought they could outlast the siege. But Khalid controlled the countryside. That meant, all food coming into the city, cut off. All reinforcements, intercepted. All messengers, captured. Damascus began to starve. Emperor Heraclius tried to send a relief army, 12,000 troops. But Khalid intercepted them at a narrow mountain pass, routed them, sent the survivors running. Inside Damascus, morale collapsed. Then, something unexpected happened. A man inside Damascus, a Greek Christian named Jonah, climbed over the wall at night, found Khalid, and told him, "There's going to be a religious festival. Most of the guards will be distracted. If you attack then, I'll help you get inside." Why did Jonah betray his own city? The sources say it was because his wedding had been interrupted by the siege. He was angry. Whether that's true or not, Khalid used the information. On the night of September 18, 634, Khalid and 100 elite soldiers climbed the walls, dropped into the city, killed the guards, opened the eastern gate, and let the Muslim army flood inside. The Byzantine garrison, realizing they were overwhelmed, surrendered. Damascus had fallen. The fall of Damascus sent shockwaves across the Roman Empire. For Heraclius, this wasn't just a defeat. It was a catastrophe. Syria was the wealthiest province of the empire. It produced grain, olive oil, wine. It was the economic heart of the Eastern Roman Empire. Losing Damascus Damascus meant losing the entire region. And that meant the land route to Egypt, the breadbasket of the empire, was now cut. Heraclius knew, if he didn't stop the Muslims now, the empire was finished. So he made a decision. He would gather every soldier he could find, from Anatolia, from Armenia, from Egypt, and he would crush the Muslim army once and for all. But while Heraclius was preparing his counterattack, something happened in the Muslim capital. Caliph Abu Bakr, the man who had ordered Khalid to conquer Syria, died. A new caliph was chosen, Umar ibn al-Khattab. And Umar, he hated Khalid, not because Khalid was a bad general, but because Khalid was too independent, too aggressive, too willing to make decisions without asking permission. And Umar wanted control, so he made a decision that shocked everyone. He fired Khalid. Umar sent a letter to Syria. Khalid is relieved of command. Abu Ubaidah is now the supreme commander. When Khalid received the letter, he didn't argue. He didn't protest. He simply handed command to Abu Ubaidah. And then, he kept fighting. As a regular soldier, no command, no authority, just another warrior in the army. Historians still debate why Umar did this. Some say it was jealousy. Others say it was politics. Umar didn't want a general to become more popular than the caliph. But whatever the reason, it didn't matter, because the biggest battle was about to begin. By July 636, Emperor Heraclius had assembled the largest Roman army since the Persian Wars. Sources vary wildly on the numbers. Some say 40,000, some say 100,000. Modern historians estimate somewhere around 50,000 to 80,000 troops. It was a multi-ethnic force: Greeks, Armenians, Arab Christians from the Ghassanid tribes, 5 columns, 5 generals. Their mission was simple: destroy the Muslim army. The Muslims, meanwhile, had about 25,000 to 30,000 troops. They were outnumbered at least 2 to 1, maybe 3 to 1. And Abu Ubaidah, now in command, knew it, so he made a decision: retreat. Not to Arabia, but to a place where the terrain would favor them. A place called Yarmouk. Yarmouk wasn't just a random location, it was strategically perfect. To the south, the Yarmouk River Gorge, a deep, impassable canyon. To the west, the Wadi al-Rukad, another steep ravine with only one crossing. To the north and east, open desert. This meant the Romans couldn't outflank them from the south or west. And if the Romans attacked from the front, the Muslims could retreat into the desert if things went wrong. Or, if the Romans broke, they would have nowhere to retreat to except the ravines. It was the perfect kill zone, and the Muslims knew it. The Battle of Yarmouk began on August 15, 636. For 6 days, the two armies clashed. Let me walk you through it, because this is one of the most intense battles in history. Day 1, August 15th, the Romans advanced slowly, tested the Muslim lines, then pulled back, both sides probing, feeling each other out. Day 2, August 16th, the Romans attacked before dawn, caught the Muslims off guard. The Byzantine left wing smashed into the Muslim right, pushed them all the way back to their camp. The Muslim women, yes, the women, grabbed weapons and shamed the men into fighting again. Whether that's literal or symbolic, we don't know. But the Muslim right reformed, counterattacked, pushed the Romans back. By nightfall, both sides were exhausted. Day 3, August 17th, the Romans tried again. This time, they brought elephants. War elephants, armored, terrifying. The Muslim horses panicked. The cavalry fled. The infantry was left alone. And the Romans? They charged. For hours, the Muslims were pinned, losing ground. Then, a unit of light Arab infantry did something insane. They ran between the elephants' legs, slashed their eyes, blinded them. The elephants, unable to see, turned around and stampeded back through the Roman lines. Chaos. The Muslims counterattacked, pushed the Romans back. Day 4, August 18th, this was the worst day for the Muslims. The Romans unleashed a massive arrow barrage. Muslim sources called it the Day of Lost Eyes, because so many soldiers were blinded by arrows. The Muslim left wing was shattered, retreated to the camp, but once again, they reformed, held the line. Day 5, August 19th, both sides were exhausted. There was apparently an attempt to negotiate. It failed. Day 6, August 20th, this was the final day. At dawn, Khalid, who had been watching and waiting, made his move. He consolidated all the Muslim cavalry into one massive force. Then he did what he always did, he attacked the flanks. The Byzantine left wing was crushed, then the center, then the right. The Romans, realizing they were being surrounded, panicked. They tried to retreat, but the only crossing over the Yarmouk River, blocked by a Muslim cavalry unit. The Romans were trapped between between the Muslim army and the ravine. Thousands were killed. Thousands more threw themselves into the gorge trying to escape. By the end of the day, half the Roman army was dead. The Muslims lost less than 5,000 troops. The Battle of Yarmouk was the end of Roman Syria. Heraclius, hearing the news, abandoned Antioch. He retreated to Constantinople, and reportedly said, "Farewell, Syria, what a beautiful land this is for the enemy." Within a year, the Muslims controlled all of Syria, most of Palestine, the roads to Egypt. Rome would never get them back. But here's what's even more incredible, this all happened in the same month as another massive battle, in Iraq, against the Persians. Remember, while Khalid was in Syria, the war in Iraq never stopped. After Khalid left in 634, the Muslims there had been struggling. They won some battles, lost others, but in 636, the same year as Yarmouk, Caliph Umar sent a new commander, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, one of the Prophet's closest companions. And Sa'd, he brought a 30,000-strong army with him. The Persians, now desperate, sent their best general, Rostam Farrakhzad, with 60,000 troops. The two armies met at al-Qadisiyah, near the ancient city of Babylon. The battle lasted 4 days. Day 1, the Persians advanced with elephants. The Muslims panicked, but held. Day 2, more elephants. The Muslims blinded them. Same tactic as Yarmouk. Day 3, the bloodiest day. Neither side could break through. Day 4, a sandstorm hit. Sa'd's cavalry, led by Qaqa, yes, the same Qaqa from earlier, broke through the Persian center. Found Rostam, killed him. The Persian army, leaderless, collapsed. By the end of the battle, 20,000 Persians were dead. The Muslims lost fewer than 10,000, and the road to the Persian capital, Ctesiphon, was open. So let me summarize what just happened. In August 636, in the same month, the Muslims destroyed the Roman field army at Yarmouk, destroyed the Persian field army at al-Qadisiyah, two of the greatest empires in history, both with centuries of military tradition, both with vastly larger armies, defeated in the same month, by an army that didn't exist 10 years earlier. How? Speed, mobility, unity, but most of all, they understood something Rome and Persia had forgotten. Empires don't fall because they're weak. They fall because they're too slow to adapt. So here's the truth they don't teach. The early Muslim conquests weren't a miracle. They weren't luck. They were the result of timing. Rome and Persia were exhausted from their own wars. Tactics. The Muslims used speed and mobility in ways no one had seen before. Administration. They lowered taxes and allowed religious freedom, so populations welcomed them. Leadership. Generals like Khalid were willing to take insane risks, and they worked. But most importantly, they moved faster than anyone thought possible. They crossed deserts that were supposed to be uncrossable. They fought battles they were supposed to lose. And within 10 years of the Prophet Muhammad's death, they had conquered Iraq, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Persia, parts of North Africa, half the known world. So the next time you hear someone say, "How did Islam spread so fast?" the answer isn't just religion. It's not just faith. It's because the people who built it understood something fundamental. History is made by those who move first. Not the strongest, not the richest, the fastest. Rome and Persia spent centuries fighting each other. The Muslims, they spent a decade conquering them both. And the world we live in today, the borders, the languages, the religions, the conflicts, all of it traces back to this moment. To Khalid crossing an impossible desert, to Yarmouk, to al-Qadisiyah, to the storm that shattered empires. If this video changed how you see history, hit that like button. If you want to see what happens next, because this story is far from over, subscribe and turn on notifications. The Muslims are about to invade Egypt, then North Africa, then Spain, and in 100 years, they'll be at the gates of Paris. But that's a story for another time. Drop a comment. What shocked you most about this story? I'll see you in the next video.